In fact, the vocal folds resonate this way, front to back like this, all right? So I'll hold them up just to make it easier. Your vocal folds should be resonating nicely like this. In fact, when I'm doing that voice, they're scraping. That's called glottic fry, okay?
So in fact, you're hearing my voice. Do this. It's bad. Bad. Don't do it a lot.
And don't do it until you have my kind of training, all right? So that, in fact, is what's called a fried voice, okay? It's whispery, and it's fried.
What else? What else when I give you the whole banana? Not very sinister sounding, is it? Have a banana split. Welcome to Demon Ice Cream.
He's recording this too. God, I'm terrified. In fact, there is still a kind of a whispery quality to it, isn't there?
It's still kind of there.
But I'm adding more voice to it. But there's another quality that maybe you're not hearing quite so clearly. Can someone else pick it out? The vocal placement is further back in the throat. Does anybody here speak Russian? Soviet languages? Slavic? Polish? Ukrainian? Can you hear the difference of what is in back of throat? It is in back of my throat. I am placing it back further.
Which is what I have this. It makes it easier.
And you go from a voice like this
to a voice like this.
No one believes it's me. Cowboy Bebop fans here?
Yeah.
Yep. You guys know what voice I did in that show? Besides a reporter. One of the few times I get to use my own voice. I almost never get to use my own voice. Anyone know? I'll give you a hint. He's probably the only one in the whole show that was ever dressed like a cowboy.
Oh my god, Andy? Is it Punch?
Punch. You're right. Punch. There was another wonderful situation where the casting director called me and said, the client told me what they want, and you were the only one I could think of. Okay, what is it this time? Now, this brings in to the making of voices another quality. You just heard me do an accent, okay? I do about 50 of those. I'm a phoneticist, speech technician. Again, I teach this stuff at university level, so don't do this at home, you'll hurt yourself. Okay. I teach this to actors. What I do essentially is have a numbered system where I can transcribe or change one sound to another, and you memorize what these are, and I can give them to you over the phone by number. Okay. Anybody have been to Australia? Oh, I haven't either. Been to New Zealand and never to Australia, but I can sound like an Australian. You got to have these sort of things in your front pocket. You got to be ready with them every time, because you never know when you walk into a session and I say, by the way, you got to be Australian today. Surprise! So here I was. I walked in and I've been told what I need to do. They told me for Punch, in Cowboy Bebop, that they want him to sound like a Texan, but they also want him to sound like he's Mexican. Welcome to acting when they throw you a challenge like that. Just beat me up, you know. Hit me with something blunt, you know, and just knock me out. But that's what they wanted. The client said that. They told the casting director, this is what we're after. And you might recall he's also a black character. I didn't know that. I walked into the session and went, okay, Texan, Mexican. I walked up, oh, and he's black on top of it all. Okay, right. Which had nothing to do at all with the, you know, the way I made the character sound. So, you know, y'all can get over here and do your hard R's, and you can twang around a bit and you sound a bit like a Texan like that, okay? That ain't hard to do. It's pretty easy for me to get into that sort of mode, you know? That's more of an East Texas sound. Mexican? I speak a pretty fair amount of Mexican Spanish, and the accent is not hard to do. You can put the accent in, and it's not a difficult one for me to do at all. It's an accent I grew up around most of my life in Southern California, all right? And the Spanish I speak is essentially Mexican Spanish. But you just heard me do those two accents. One's a dialect, one's an accent. We won't go into that, okay? But you just heard me do those two, didn't you? Okay? Is it running around in your mind right now how you do it? It shouldn't be. I'd be worried about you, okay? That's the kind of thing you should say, okay, leave that to someone else. This is frightening. So I had to come up with a way, and I said, all right, I can't do two accents at one time. You're doing an accent, and then you're changing an accent. I said, however, I can do the two accents within one line. I can change in the middle of the line and just speak with another accent. I said that before I tried it. That was the new challenge I gave myself. But for instance, one of the lines I had was, "What? Are you kidding me?" So I thought I'll go ahead and start off and sound like I'm a Texan by saying, "What?" And I finished like with the Mexican line. So I said this, "What? Are you kidding me?" And that was the day when the director looked at me and I looked at her and we kind of went, we're going to get letters, but yeah, let's go with this, you know. And in fact, it worked out pretty well. And still my favorite line was probably the very first, I think one of the first ones I had. And this is where the fun comes in, where you don't just get to do voices and characters and things, you have to be able to also lip sync and do the timing with the dubbing. All right, and this line was, and now for today's hot news. I'm sure most of you don't know the series that well that you would remember, but that's one of the very first episodes, okay? And that's what we did, Punch and Judy. We told everybody who was wanted and for how much, and maybe how to find them or whatever. That's what Punch and Judy did, all right? So Judy would say something, and because it's an entertainment program, I would say stuff like, "What? Are you kidding me?" You know? And she'd say, "Yes, Punch, that's what we're doing." Well, we would start off the program and say, okay, and now the stories and the reports and all that, and my line was, and now for today's hot news, okay? But watch carefully. This was the sync. That's on the screen. That's what I have to do. That's on the screen. I can't just say it the way I want to say it. I have to make it match that. And so it was, okay, now run it through your minds. How are you going to say, and now for today's hot news? You got to do somewhere. So I sat and thought, and the director thought, and the engineer, and I said, I got it. Just roll it. Go ahead and roll it. I didn't even try. And so the cue came. This was an insane time in our lives. The cue came and I said, and now for today's hot news. That's how I solved the problem. I brought the accent into it and said, hot, caliente. But I said, hot news. I'd be interested to hear what the original Japanese character did. I don't know. I never got to hear the original Japanese, or as we call it, OJ. You know? And you'll see it in the script when they add a cue, because in the original Japanese, the character will do this. But they won't voice it. And we have to account for every movement, every sound, everything. You see a lip movement, we have to do something there. So when they write the cue in there that wasn't in the original thing, they put N-I-O-J, not in original Japanese. But we'll just say, well, let me hear the OJ. So when I watched this character and I just saw him go, I said, all right, let's just go ahead and do this, because I was afraid to hear what actually happened. A lot of times they won't pay attention to the sync. Sometimes when you voice these things, it doesn't matter. To us it does, to the voice actors, to the directors it does, but sometimes the original producers won't actually care about it. They'll just want to do the line, and that's it. It does tell the story, you know. Yes? You're scratching your head. That's like raising your hand. You have to remember.
That's all I did.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Putting you on the spot because you're videotaping me. It's okay. Now, when you do a voice, you need to be able to sustain it. What are the qualities I talked about that are not good for you? Yes? That's right. He did this, and you're right. This glottic fry is not good for you, all right? I do several versions of it. I once did a character named Daku. I can't remember the name of the character. But I did it in my voice, but kind of big like this, all right? And then I turned into Hyper Daku. I have no idea what that meant either, or why. But they wanted me to change my voice and become more awesome or sinister or something. So instead of doing this, I suddenly became like this. I'm Hyper Daku. You know the show?
I
Oh.
was gonna say that the quality was whispering.
Whispering? This one? That's not whispering, no. The ones I said, they oh, whisper. No, throaty. No.